Welcome to another edition of the Fundication Show. We have a great opportunity for you guys today to learn and hear from Streamline Capital. And we have Brian and Stephen here with us today. So let's jump right into it. Guys, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, Brian, we've had you on the show before, so now it's great to have another one of your team members, Stephen, here. Do us a favor, in case people haven't watched the previous episode.
Okay.
Give us the background and the story. How did Streamline come about, and what are you guys up to?
Yeah, well, Streamline, long time coming. I grew up in Salt Lake City area. The only reason I ever left Salt Lake was, post 9/11 was to serve in the military. So started getting into real estate, shortly after that while I was active duty, and really just got enamored with real estate. And the whole time, I wanted to buy more and more real estate, and I specifically wanted to do it in Salt Lake. But I mean, for the longest time, when I'm in, lived in Okinawa, Japan, in Rio de Janeiro, Mexico City, Washington D.C. I literally lived all over the world, but buying properties in Utah from other places just, it was a bridge too far. So I picked up a lot of real estate while I was active duty, and retired after 20 years of service in 2021, and moved back to the area. And it was just, I've always wanted to build a real estate portfolio, and I like to use the word empire, but we'll call it a portfolio for now. Um, but I always wanted to build a real estate portfolio here in Utah. And moving back, I had the experience already, had already been a part of probably 1,000, 1,200 units when I moved back to the area. And so, yeah, I have the experience. I'm now back into an area that I love and I've always wanted to get into. And so, yeah, shortly after, founded Streamline Capital, yeah, the rest is history. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, first of all, again, thank you for your service to the country. And what's the time frame on that? When did you end up back here in this general area, and when did you start buying properties?
So I officially retired end of October of 21. Ended up back here a little bit earlier than that, but at the time I was with a previous company that I had co-founded, and they still are buying properties in the Southeast, but our portfolio at the time was South Carolina and Georgia. And about, 8 or 10 months after moving back, kind of realized that long distance relationship wasn't working. I was living on the East Coast. I wasn't very far from the properties from the partnership, but um, I was also at the same time lobbying to get them to let me start, finding properties in the local area. And there was a lot of resistance from them. They didn't know the Salt Lake area like I did. So, really it took until kind of mid 2022 to realize that, we wanted different things. And so I left that partnership mid 22, and then early 2023 was started the company and started in earnest looking for the properties here in the Salt Lake Metro.
Yeah, very cool. And then how did Stephen get involved, and what does the overall team structure look like?
Well, right now, we've had a couple of people come and go, but Stephen, a broker that I was working with, I mentioned to him that I was looking for somebody to help me with acquisitions, and he said, "I know a guy. Do you want to talk with him?" And I think a couple days later, Stephen and I were on a Zoom call. A couple days after that, eating lunch together, and so he's been with us for about a year right now. We do have a couple of other hires, that we're looking to make in the next 6 months. But right now, we got a lean team. We are relying very heavily on a lot of vendors to augment. And then when on the properties, we have a couple of partners that are not affiliated with Streamline Capital, but we'll typically partner with people for the things that we lack right now. So yeah, right now, Stephen and I are it. We just brought we brought on Romina as well. She's doing a lot of the admin, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff as well. Probably won't see her very much, but she's helping out a ton too.
Yeah, very cool. Stephen, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background and why you decided that Streamline was the place you wanted to hang your hat for a while.
Yeah, of course. So I actually started my real estate career in New York City. And right out of college, got a job doing property management for multifamily properties and retail. And I was in charge of managing properties, leasing properties, taking care of major capital X projects out there, and really got my foot in the door. Got to see how intense being a real estate owner was with super heavy laws out there. And then during COVID, my wife and I had a second baby, our second son, and we didn't want to be in an apartment all day. And so we ended up moving back to Utah where our family was. And I joined a big brokerage where I sold retail properties. And then after about 3 years of that, that's when Brian and I connected. And, where I started in apartments, and now I have this opportunity to do apartments again here in Utah where I'm from, was a great opportunity for me. And meeting Brian, he checked all the right boxes, right? There were no red flags that I could see. And for me, that's really important. I've had a lot of good family members and good friends go into partnerships, and they overlooked some of those issues, and bad things happen. And so for me, that was one of those things that I really made sure to look for. And I mean, I'm still here, right? So nothing.
I'm smiling really big because I wave a really big red flag everywhere I go. So Steven's a BYU grad, I'm a Utah grad, and so they're, the two schools are rivals. So anyway, when he said Brian had no red flags, I'm like, I got plenty of red flags, Steven. I got a lot of them actually. So,
Yeah. If you guys didn't get the joke, that's Utah's colors.
Utah's red, BYU's blue, and it is. A lot of people call the rivalry the Holy War because you've got Utah as a state school and BYU as a church school. But yeah, it's really, really big here. Anybody in Utah would have gotten that joke immediately. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what does your acquisitions look like? Is this project that we're going to be talking about one of your first? And if so, kind of what is the overall trajectory?
So the first, this is our second acquisition. And it's a portfolio, so I guess that would make it the second and third acquisition. But my bread and butter, in the Southeast has essentially been value add properties. And I really like that niche. I like buying something that needs a little bit of just TLC, and one thing that I really love is like just going through that, I like the before and after pictures, but creating that after, going from that before and creating that after is something that I love about this business. So, we typically target, properties that are in, and I'm going to stress this, they have to be in good areas. We're buying the properties that are in good areas. We prefer areas that are on the up and up. But looking for things that haven't been renovated in 10 to 15, sometimes 20 years. And, we get those under contract and go from there. So the main business plan is we're going to be looking for the value add opportunities. We're going to be looking to do, a lot of renovations, mainly, quite honestly, a lot of them are going to be cosmetic. We're obviously going to fix any deferred maintenance or any problems there. But, the goal is to give each property a facelift. Take something that's, a little bit old and turn it into something that that looks new, even though it's not.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what is your target market area? Where are you willing to invest?
Mhm.
And what are some of the trends that you're seeing right now?
Yeah, where are we willing to invest? I think one of the mistakes that I think we made in the Carolinas and Georgia is we were spread all over the map, and I mean, South Carolina is not a huge state, but we couldn't go. I think we had 10 properties in our portfolio, but we literally could not visit all 10 properties in the same day. I mean, just the time it took to drive from one property to another, it took a full 2, sometimes 3 days to do, get to every property. So, as far as where we're looking, we like the Wasatch Front. I guess that's a term that people outside Utah may need some explanation, but Wasatch Mountains are essentially Salt Lake City is right in front of the Wasatch Mountains. So Ogden to Provo is kind of what we're looking for. And Salt Lake's right in the middle. So The idea is we want to have things that are relatively close to each other. We're going to get a lot more efficiencies by having things close to each other. So as far as where I'm looking, Greater Salt Lake City Metro is the answer to that. But within the metro, and speaking of trends, Salt Lake City is in a valley. It's ringed by mountains. And for the most part, over the last 30 or 40 years, it's been filled out. There's not a lot of, just vacant land there for development. And so, one of the trends is, there's a lot of redevelopment, there's a lot of infill. There's a lot of, smaller buildings getting bulldozed with bigger buildings built on top of them. So, I really like the when we're getting into the older neighborhoods, one thing that I definitely wanna see is the neighborhoods with a lot of that new development, redevelopment, and that infill type project. And the one we're gonna be talking about today is exactly that. There's a couple of properties within, a half mile of these properties that have been completely bulldozed and brand new townhomes are popping up or brand new apartments are popping up. So, we're looking for the areas that are getting a lot of attention from developers, a lot of attention from flippers, a lot of attention and attention from people that are just making stuff better. And I think South Salt Lake is exactly that. We have if you're looking in Salt Lake in general, downtown, you can't go north of downtown because you run into mountains. You can only go about 15 blocks to the east of downtown because you run into mountains. When you start going to the west of downtown, you have I-15 that, really cuts a lot of things off. And so a lot of the development, from Salt Lake City is coming to the south. I'd say south into the east are where most of the action is. And, we're about 25 blocks south of that downtown area. And so, this is an area that's gonna see more and more and more development because you have, State Street is one of the main north-south corridors, and we're still not very far from I-15. And we're actually right where I-15 and I-80 come together. So when we start looking at, where the development happens, the lines of communication, that's a term we'd use in the military a lot, and that just popped in my head, but the roads, the main roads, the arteries, that's where most of the development happens is right along those arteries. And, both the properties we're gonna be talking about are right along that State Street corridor, and that's where most of the growth is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Why do you guys choose to focus on value add, and what's the overall, premise behind it?
Yeah, so, I mean, with value add, I mean, just the name of it is there, I think, a lot of people I think these flipping shows on TV have been enormously, popular recently, so, a lot of people understand the idea, and it's you can usually get higher returns from the value add properties. There is a little bit of extra risk associated with it, but I mean, it's the same idea as you see on the flipping shows. You find something that hasn't, gotten, the love that it deserves or something like that, and you come in, you make things look better. You do some renovations, new flooring, new paint, things like that, and it does boost the value quite a bit. And so for a little bit of money, you can make, some substantial returns. Um, so yeah, with the value, why we target the value adds, just besides the fact that I enjoy, taking something old, making it look new, um, you tend to get better returns when you're doing that. When you buy like something that's brand new, you are still going to get good returns. You're going to earn cash flow from it. The property is going to appreciate. But on the value add, you can force a lot of that appreciation to happen. On stabilized properties, the appreciation that happens is just a normal market appreciation. You're going to get that in the value adds as well, but when we're putting money in to make these properties better, um, we're forcing some of that appreciation to happen. So, end of the day, you can usually get better returns, and it just really it's one of these things that just helps helps everyone involved. We're bringing in contractors And, we paid a single contractor almost $1 million this year. We'll hit the $1 million mark with them real soon. But, a lot of that money is going to local employees. And then we're looking at what we're doing, the impact we have to communities. One of the worst things that can happen to as a community is nothing, where it just, keeps on going downhill. And eventually, buildings wear out, streets wear out, things like that. But, being able to just, do our part to keep these communities strong, healthy, and vibrant, I love everything about it.
Yeah. And I'll add a little bit to that too. It's our real focus is to help people live better lives. And it really starts if we want our investors to have a better life because they invested with us, that ultimately drips down right to the tenants.
We got to make sure that they have good living conditions and that they want to stay, or new tenants want to drive by and they see our property and they're like, they've done a lot of good work. I want to live there. And so the renovations that we're doing, it helps the quality of the property increase and our equity go up, which is what we want for our investors. But it also helps, like he was saying, with the community and letting our tenants just feel like they should stay there for a long time, which obviously boosts the community and helps people live better lives. So that was one of the big reasons why I ended up joining with Brian about a year ago too, is because we have that impact, and we've actually seen that in one of our properties where we've been able to change the community because we've come in and we've said, hey, we actually want our streets to be better. Let's hire, this group or these guards to help keep our streets safe. And so we are in real time making that change happen. And that's been awesome to see.
And not to mention with the communities, I very much have a vested interest. One of the properties in this portfolio, Blair Street, my 22-year-old daughter, when we got this under contract, and she just moved out of the city, but she lived 4 blocks to the north of Blair Street Apartments, right? And so when we start talking about, we want to make these communities better, this is my community. My oldest daughter lives in Mill Creek, which, from White Pines, she's about 14 blocks away from White Pines, which is about 2 miles. And so, it's not just that there is a monetary aspect to it. There is this feeling of this is my home, but, this is literally, where my adult kids are living as well. So, there's more than just the financial. There's a vested interest because I want my kids to live in this, be able to live in this community. I want my grandkids, and as long as they choose to live in the Salt Lake City area, I want them to be able to have a safe place and clean communities all around.
Well, and I think we do have a different dynamic here in Utah. It's something that's always attracted a lot of investors, which means there's a lot of competition. How do you stay relevant in the Salt Lake City marketplace when it seems like so much money is getting poured into, especially the multifamily sector?
Carving out your niche is kind of what it is. And, when you look at transactions in multifamily, I saw somebody throw a stat out in a book that I read saying, 92% of all multifamily transactions over 20 units are brokered, meaning there's a commercial real estate broker involved in it. And so how do we stay relevant? Well, we're focusing on broker relations, which really helps to get Stephen from that brokerage world. He spent a couple years, I don't think he mentioned it, he spent a couple years with Marcus and Millichap, which is one of the larger brokerages in the nation. But we make sure that the brokers know who we are. We make sure they know exactly what we're looking for. And the other thing is we make sure that we close. When we get a property under contract, we put enough work, we put a lot of effort into the property before we get it under contract. But we're doing that to make sure that we're maintaining good relationships with brokers. The last thing we want to do is get a property under contract and then back out because, the brokers are expecting, commissions and stuff like that. So what we're really doing to make sure that we have a steady flow of deals is broker relations, and I do, one of the core tenets of our company is, we do want to maintain relationships with a lot of the local, vendors and partners. So I look at the brokers as kind of a partnership by extension, and we've got a locally owned property management company. They have 30,000 units nationally, but, it is locally owned and their headquarters is probably a 15-minute drive from where we're sitting right now. But we treat them as partners as well, and they're taking a lot of that management off of our plate, and we're trying to get similar relations with everybody involved. And one of my favorite relationships is with a local construction company, BCC. We try to foster and develop these relationships so that you know long term, that's really going to help us, more than anything else, is having, brokers that we're treating as partners, having property management companies, construction, general contractors that, we have a long-standing relationship with. I think we'll just be getting better and better service, and getting better and better at what we do by doing that.
And I really like this question that you asked about what really sets us apart. So when I first joined the team, it was my job to find properties and underwrite them because I had those brokerage relationships. And in talking with all those brokers, I learned very quickly that what we're doing is very uncommon in this area for the space that we're focusing on. And so what really sets us apart is we're one of the only groups focusing on, this $10 to $20 million asset multifamily class, taking it from a C class to a B class. A lot of other groups either focus on really, really big stuff, which we'll get to one day, but or a lot smaller. And so we have this really nice niche, like Brian mentioned earlier, where we focus on improving this type of property. And so the competition that we have is very small. But also something else that sets us apart is we are local. A lot of other syndicators do stuff far away, but I was raised here, grew up here. I lived, like I said, in New York for a few years, but we know this area really well. And I think that also helps us set us apart because we can manage the properties on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, I hear a lot of people talk about investor relations. Not a lot of people talk about broker relations. So I would love to hear a little bit more about that. Are there specific strategies that you put in place? Is that something that you manage with a CRM process? And Stephen, do you still hold your license? And if you do, is there any threat there? Sometimes, there's a feeling of competition. And on the other side of that, is there any benefit there? Do you guys sometimes save commissions because you've got your license?
I do have my license still. I do hold it. And it does provide value to us because, it's basically a name tag on my chest saying, I know what I'm doing. I've been in this world. I've done all this work. We know the market really well. And there is value to having my real estate license. It's never come up when we've talked with brokers. And the best way that I have found to keep good relationships with brokers is meet them face to face and bring them Chick-fil-A sandwiches. Like that. For honestly, that's the best way that I've been able to sustain these relationships. These brokers are hungry in terms of trying to get deals done and work their relationships, but they're also physically hungry, right? And so giving them an opportunity to just chat openly, and it has broken a lot of ice to take these guys out to lunch and be face to face with them.
Yeah, not on the commission aspect. I mean, we're never going to take a commission away from a broker from that aspect. There's a lot, and when Stephen came on board, we did discuss, do we keep his license current? And there are more good reasons to keep it current. But, as far as, us, we're not going to take any of that commission away from the broker. But I mean, when you look at our processes, we have core processes written for, everything that we do. A couple of the things is we want to be responsive to the brokers, so if they send us something, we are going to respond, so if I get an email saying, hey, Brian, here's a new deal, or Stephen gets an email saying, hey, Stephen, here's a new deal, we are going to respond to it, and we're also using each one of those responses as an opportunity to reinforce exactly what we're doing, right? So, right now our response to brokers is, hey, thanks for sending that to us. We have one property under contract, and we're once we're done raising the money on this property, we'll start looking for our next one. So we're using those opportunities as a reminder to them every time. We're not ignoring you. Number one, we see what you sent. We're thanking you for what you sent. We're not gonna put an offer in on it right now because we have something else under contract that's taking the focus of our time, and we would love, to do business with you in 2 or 3 months when we're able to handle another acquisition. So the communication aspect, we try to respond, within 24 to 48 hours to all broker communications. But as far as, some of the other questions, what we do is, we have a tiered system on, what brokers get. So we're treating the brokers differently based on, the potential value there, So our tier one brokers, we're spending more time on, and we're actually spending more money on. We'll send them little gifts here and there. We'll take them to lunch, more frequently. We'll stop by their offices with Chick-fil-A sandwiches for everybody in the office. And so we're not doing that for every brokerage, but we have our tier one brokers. And basically, our definition of tier one are the brokers that are able to bring us a lot of volume, and we have to like them as well. I mean, there's more to it than the definition of just like, but but if they're somebody who can bring us a lot of volume and you know have the same core values, that's really what the like means, then they're probably in our tier one. And then I'm not going to go into who's tier one, here on the air, but
Sure.
so yeah, we spend more time with our tier one brokers, and we feel that those tier one brokers are the ones that are going to help us move the fastest as well. And so, we have 3 tiers. The tier 3 brokers, that aren't going to get as much attention, but it's just a matter of focusing on the people and the relationships that are going to bring the most value.
Yeah, and as a broker too, information is power,
Mhm.
and we get a lot of information from brokers, and so we try to reciprocate that because Utah being a non-disclosure state, anytime we close on a property, the price,
Mhm.
all the metrics behind it are hidden. There's reasons for that, and so a lot of the brokers need that information to produce more information for their other clients. And so for us to maintain that relationship with them, we share the information of, hey, we closed at this cap rate at this price. We did this, we're doing this for our renovations. And that's able to help them boost their other clientele because obviously they have more than just us that they're working with. So it's a very good relationship that we share with them.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think something you brought up is probably so overlooked because I know I get busy in my day and there's people that send me certain things and I don't even communicate back if it's not relevant in that
Yeah.
specific moment. So it makes sense what you're saying of just being in the forefront of making sure that you at the very least respond.
Yeah.
And if there's any brokers watching this and you're not getting Chick-fil-A sandwiches, you probably send more deals these guys' way so that
call
your
me.
team can get fed.
Yeah, give us a call. Get on our list. So, yeah, and I mean to that point, we actually we deliberately sat down and said, what do we want our process to look like? What do we want these relationships to look like? And if we hadn't sat down and said this is how we want brokers to perceive us, we probably wouldn't have had that procedure written down. And without that procedure written down and followed, we could just not respond to those, but it takes 30 seconds. I mean, you're going through your inbox, you see, oh, hey, broker number 1, hey, this is a tier 2 broker, but, we're still going to respond to them in 24 to 48 hours. And so as soon as I see those emails, it's really easy to just, right now, when we don't have the capability, right now, we're still a small team. We can do one acquisition at a time. But right now, when we have our hands full with that acquisition, it's really easy just to say, thanks. We're not looking right now. We're under contract for something else. And I always put that in so they know that we're still buying. And we'll be looking for another property around this time. It takes about 30 to 45 seconds, hit the go button and move on. But yeah, so we do prioritize the relationships with the brokers. And we do something similar. We have a tiered system with our investors as well. We have a, similar, if they reach out to us, we're going to get back to them. There's a lot of messages in my inbox that don't get responded to, but brokers and investors, they're going to get responses.
Yeah, Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what does the overall plan look like? I mean, from hearing what you're saying, it sounds like you're building these relationships to be long term. Is there any time where you guys imagine yourself becoming vertically integrated, where you hire your own and you build your own property management company or construction company, or is the long term plan to make sure that you have those strong ties and you can have that on somebody else's plate?
That's something that
We've talked about a
we've
lot.
talked about a
Yeah.
lot. And, as long as we have good relationships, as long as, the companies are scratching our itch, it's easier for us to not, if that makes sense, and most people that I know that have vertically integrated do it for one or two reasons. But the primary reason that people vertically integrate is because they want to do it better and cheaper,
Yeah.
and that's a question that we wrestle with. But we're putting a lot of time and effort into fostering these relationships. Partially because we need them right now, but the other thing that Steven and I have talked about is, if these guys are giving us the service that we want or need, we may never vertically integrate. And honestly, part of the reason he's keeping his broker's license is because you need a broker's license to start a property management company, right? And so, if he maintains his broker's license, if we decide to vertically integrate, we're able to do that. But with the previous company that I co-founded, when we left, we were bringing management in house. That's a lot of work. It is a whole lot of work. There's a lot of expenses involved. And so, I think we're really going to have to be feeling some pain or some strain in those relationships or the service we're getting, to really, bring that stuff in house at this point. So, I mean, I gave you a really long-winded answer, but really right now we want these relationships to work. And if there comes a point where, we think that we can do it better, bringing things in-house, we will do that.
Got it. And I think you're right. I think that, every large syndicator that I've talked to that has vertically integrated, it's usually been because they were let down by, a vendor, or that vendor was continually becoming more expensive. And so if you guys are getting the right price and you're getting the right service, I think it makes total sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really the biggest thing. And as we scale in size, we're going to have more bargaining power as well. I mean, right now, I know I'm not a big fish or a gigantic client for either one of these vendors, but I am doing what I can to push them more business. So when we're making posts on LinkedIn, when we're out and about and talking with our people, we're very happy to say, hey, these are the vendors we use. These are the people that are really, doing good work for us. And both Cornerstone and BCC Construction have gotten new clients from us doing that, right? And so it does end up being a mutually beneficial relationship. But as we scale, as we get more properties and bigger properties, we're going to be sending more money their direction. And it's going to give us a better ability to, I mean, we'll be able to make that relationship a lot better. But if something's not working right, we've got more leverage to pull and just say, hey, look, we'd really love it if you guys could.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think overall, everybody gets the picture of what you guys are doing as a company. This might be a great time to transition to talk about your current deal. What do you think?
Sounds good.